The monetization for Aion 2 is a deep concern, and it threatens to destroy the game, at least for the global audience, I believe. Now that's a little bit weird, right? Because actually it's only currently going to release in Taiwan and Korea. The global release is some point in 2026. So what am I talking about? Well, it's my belief that if we simply transpose the Korean monetization and we put it in the global release, that the game would effectively be dead on arrival. And in this video, what I'm going to do is explain the monetization in Korea, and we'll talk about what NCSoft could, should, maybe do to try and get a global version that we actually want to play. But let's talk about the damage that the Korean monetization is really potentially going to do for the Westerners. Aion 2 is releasing on the 19th of November 2025 in Korea and Taiwan. The global release, as I said, is coming at some point in 2026. There's going to be people like myself who are going to play the Korean version. Well, actually, technically, I'm going to play the Taiwanese version because it's easier to get into. And if you want to come ahead and play with us, then make sure you join either my Twitch or my Discord. Not saying I'm going to play the Taiwanese version for like ever and ever, but we'll probably play it until the global release maybe, because there's not much else on the agenda. Yesterday, there was a live stream in which they spoke about the monetization and showed off a couple of different classes. Now, some of this we already knew, but we'll go through the monetization as best as we know it. So I'm looking at the Whelps translation, the Field Graphics translation, and any other source that I have. So the monetization is relatively complex. It is going to be a free-to-play game. And then there are going to be two optional subscriptions, kind of like a lower tier one and a premium one. The lower tier one, we think will cost around about $20. Now there's a whole thing here called relative like purchasing power and all this kind of stuff. We're not sure about the finalized amounts and how much it would actually be if it came right now to the global release. But let's just call the cheap one $20 and then the more expensive one $25. It could be 15 and 25, it could be 20 and 30. Let's not get too hung up on the amounts, okay? Now, two optional subscriptions is kind of wild just to an outside point of view. Me personally as a Western gamer, it just looks like that the Koreans and NCSoft are doing some serious milking. Now, I say optional subscriptions. I think the first one might be optional in the same way that the ESO subscription is optional, as in you're really going to want it. They are saying that actually both are kind of convenience, although the full details of what's in each one, I'm not 100% sure. But the lower tier one, it sounds like you're going to need it if you want to trade or you want to use the auction house, which is pretty damn wild. Now, they were going to say, hey, we're going to do this to try and stop bots. But let's be honest, World of Warcraft is a buy-to-play game with a sub fee, and there's still bots in that game. If the bots make money, there will be bots. Obviously, we can't really talk about what the level of pay to win would be in these sub fees because we don't really know what's in them. I personally am of the belief that convenience is pay to win, but it's just not as strong pay to win as other different types of pay to win, like just being able to buy gear. Until we see the exact details of what's in that, can't really comment that much, I guess. But don't worry, the milking does not stop there. There is also two battle passes. Now, the thing is, the optional subscriptions, they last for 28 days, not quite a full month. They're going for 28 days, which is basically 4 weeks. The battle passes, though, they last for 2 months. The battle passes definitely look like they've got items in them that your character is going to want, like resources and materials and that kind of stuff. Effectively pay to win. But I mean, I'm kind of okay with the battle pass that has stuff that my character needs because it's capped pay to win, right? It doesn't matter how rich you are, you can only buy both of the subscriptions and both of the battle passes, I guess. Okay, that's actually quite a lot, but you know what I mean? At least it's capped. Now, the prices of those are going to be 1,000 kuna and 1,500 kuna, which I heard is about $45 again, but I don't really know that. So, okay, I'm not, well, just take that with a pinch of salt, I guess. Now, the optional subscriptions, they are actually server-wide, so you're out of luck if you want to play on a different server, but if all your characters are on the same server, you get it. The battle passes, though, are character-wide, so if you do have multiple characters, you might want to buy these multiple times. Now, I mentioned the kuna price for the battle pass because basically, it doesn't sound like you'll be able to obtain the subscription fee as a free-to-play player. Like, you have to buy it, basically. But the battle passes, you will be able to earn that currency in-game. Now, there is a rumor, and I haven't seen it necessarily confirmed, that to do the exchanging of the currencies, you would need the optional subscription. Don't quote me on that. I haven't seen that confirmed myself personally. But effectively, there is two currencies, two main currencies. There is kuna, which is the premium currency, so I might just refer to it as that. And there is kina, which, forgive me on the pronunciations, but that's basically just in-game gold. So gold and a premium currency. You can buy the premium currency and exchange it for gold, or if you have gold, you can find somebody who's got premium currency and exchange it, right? They're transferable at an exchange, I think, like a trading post. So for the battle passes, you can earn gold, exchange it for the premium currency, and then buy the battle pass. Now, to most people in the West, I think 2 optional subs, 2 battle passes sounds insane, sounds ludicrous, right? I almost don't care how much they are. It just sounds like pure milkage. Forget the fact that the rates seem really quite high. Forget the fact you're possibly paying $70 plus per month, which is going to be the price of like a AAA game every single month. Forget that. Just the idea, right? 2 battle passes, 2 subs sounds crazy. It doesn't really matter how pay to win or pay to win they're not. It just sounds crazy alone. And honestly, it is kind of disgusting, right? It's a little bit obscene. But the monetization doesn't stop there. It looks like you'll be able to buy extra character slots. That's kind of okay. And there's an issue here. I mentioned that you can transfer the currencies. So some things are going to be able to be bought with gold that are beneficial for your character. Like, for example, there's a timed sort of like a store that has timed items. The items in that store could be very beneficial. And yes, you can buy it with in-game gold, but the fact that you can basically get in-game gold from the premium currency devalues that as an experience, right? It effectively opens up the possibility of it being called pay to win. But you can also buy dungeon entries and effectively the loot from the dungeon with the in-game currency. Again, you can exchange that for the premium currency. So if you have premium currency, you can get those dungeon entries as well, rather than farming them. Again, opens up the idea of it being pay to win. There's also a theory that you can buy more time in the PvP Abyss area, but I've only heard that. I've not seen any like raw evidence that that's actually the case. And the reason that that would be pay to win is that it sort of sounds like most of the PvP rewards will come from PvP. And obviously if you can get an advantage there, then that would also be pay to win. But actually a lot of the argument right now is that the PvP will be effectively separate progression and will be different from the PvE. And I think a lot of people are coping on the idea that the PvP will be relatively, not pay to win because all the advantage you can get will only apply to PvE because the gear will be different and the gear comes from PvP. So maybe. Now, whilst that all sounds like pay to win, let's be honest, it does sound like pay to win. Forgetting the subscription fees and the battle passes, just being able to exchange the currency because, some of the gear is going to be on the auction house. The reality is we don't know how much pay to win that is. Now, I don't want to sound like an Aion 2 coper because I'm definitely not. I do think the game's going to have a lot of pay to win. And I think a lot of Aion 2 Andys are at least happy with the idea that there will be a relatively reasonable amount of pay to win in the game. The truth is right now, we don't know how much it is pay to win on a scale. Not even worth having an opinion right now, really. So let me take World of Warcraft as an example. You can buy the WoW token and exchange it for in-game gold on retail. Now, a lot of people say that's not really pay to win because the gold doesn't really get you that much. It only gets you some like bind on equip epics. All the best gear comes from the best content and the end game raids and stuff like that. But we kind of accept that it is pay to win because, you look at the world first runners and they're all buying an absolute shed ton of gold. So there's obviously an advantage somewhere, even if it's just on the progression for the next set of progression. So buying the in-game currency doesn't necessarily mean it's incredibly pay to win. It could be sort of like World of Warcraft, or it could be like Throne of Liberty, where you can then just use that to buy gear that you wouldn't be able to have, which is basically endgame gear, at least when it launched. Let's not talk about Throne of Liberty too much here. My point is that the same system, effectively, buying the in-game currency, can have a different level of pay to win depending on the game systems. All we can hope for right now, I guess, is that the pay to win is on the lower side because the systems itself will mean most of the gear, most of the stuff you actually wear at the end game, you get from doing content. Kind of falls down if you can buy extra dungeon tokens and dungeon entries and if you can buy more time in the PvP area. But the reality is there's a little bit of hope and cope that it won't be as bad as it sounds. I'm not a believer in that. NCSoft in their financials said it would be pay to win. Most people are thinking it's going to be pay to win. I just want to be clear that we don't fully know the exact extent right now, okay? For me though, like, even if the game ends up being not that pay to win, just the fact that they've got these 2 subs, these 2 battle passes, the Western perception of the Korean and the Taiwanese version right now is not very good, right? It honestly, people are really not happy with it. But the saving grace for NCSoft America is that this is a small chunk of the MMO player base right now. If NCSoft America come out and they get rid of some of these systems, like they combine it to 1 optional sub that's only convenience, they have 1 battle pass which is relatively good value, maybe they disable the in-game gold to keener rate exchange thing, you know, the game could change. And let's hope that NCSoft America do something like that. I still think they'll keep the exchange because I think that's actually a big like part of the pay to win. That's the big milking. Sort of Throne of Liberty pretty much showed that. I do hope and think that NCSoft America will kind of agree that 2 subs and 2 battle passes is probably not for the best. That's a lot of milking. And I'm okay with a little bit of milking, but I don't want my teats to be running dry and red raw. Let me be clear, by the way. One thing I can say is if the game is pay to win, I'm going to give you my honest assessment of how much pay to win it is. Even if I love the rest of the game, which there's little bits that I already don't love, but you know, like the Kuma nature of the skins and the sliding movement when they run and stuff like that. But let's just assume we love the rest of the game. I will promise you right now, I will give you my true honest value of how pay to win I think the game is. That could be more than other people, it could be less than other people. I don't know until we try it. I can also say to you that I really dislike pay to win. Now people will say, Jay, you're a hypocrite, right? You dislike pay to win, but you're going to play a pay to win game. Well, no, not really. There's things about New World that I didn't like, but I played that game for thousands of hours. You don't have to like everything about the things that you like. You don't discard your friends because they occasionally annoy you. Sometimes you take the bad because you really like the good. It's kind of like a balance. However, I'm very much aware that some people will be watching this being like, any amount of pay to win, you're donezo, you're not interested. And that's fair enough. I completely understand that, I agree with that. But I don't think you're a hypocrite if you don't like pay to win and you still play the game. But ultimately, yes, let's hope NCSoft America, please don't give me 2 subs, 2 battle passes. That's wild. And try and make it just less pay to win, right? If this releases in the West, we ain't gonna like it. And the Westerners are just looking at it right now and being like, that is disturbing. I literally don't care for that game, it's dead. But there's literally nothing else right now, NCSoft America. Get that game out, get it less pay to win, and I think you'll be in for good times. Well, we'll see. Anyway, come watch my Twitch, come join my Discord. Have a most beautiful day. Like and subscribe. Goodbye.